Ed Gein, the farmer who inspired horror. In the quiet town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, the world appeared calm. Rolling fields, dense forests, and an old, weathered farmhouse, home to a man who seemed harmless, even ordinary. He lived alone, tending to his farm, rarely seen in town, and known mostly as a recluse. But beneath the surface of this rural idyll, a darkness festered. So profound, so disturbing, it would shock the nation and inspire some of the most infamous horror stories of the 20th century. This is the story of Ed Gein, the farmer who inspired horror. Edward Theodore Gein was born on August 27, 1906, the second of two sons to George and Augusta Gein. His early life was shaped by a domineering and fanatically religious mother. Augusta Gein was deeply distrustful of the outside world, particularly women. She warned young Ed that all women, except herself, were sinful and corrupt. She kept her sons away from the world, forbidding social interaction, education, and any hint of normal childhood. Augusta's influence created a profound psychological impact on Ed, instilling fear, isolation, and a warped view of women that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Ed's father, George, was often distant and abusive. He was a heavy drinker and worked long hours on the farm, leaving Augusta to dominate the household. Ed's older brother, Henry, left the farm at an early age, leaving Ed entirely under his mother's control. When Ed was just a teenager, tragedy struck. His father died suddenly in 1940. Not long after, his brother Henry passed away, leaving Ed alone with Augusta, his world now entirely defined by her. By all accounts, Ed was a simple, shy man, withdrawn and obedient, until the death of his mother in 1945. Her death changed everything. Life after Augusta. Augusta's death left Ed unmoored. He was a man who had never learned to live independently, never learned to interact normally with the world. The only constant in his life, his mother's moral authority, was gone. In the years that followed, Ed retreated further into isolation. He rarely spoke to neighbors, often walking the town at night, wandering the graveyards of Plainfield and surrounding areas. It was during this period that Ed's interest in the dead began to manifest. He started visiting local cemeteries under cover of darkness, digging up graves and stealing human remains. He took body parts back to his farmhouse, where he began creating a macabre collection: skulls, bones, and skin. Over time, Ed began using the materials to craft items: lampshades made of human skin, a belt from human nipples, masks fashioned from faces. These objects, grotesque and horrifying, reflected a mind utterly consumed by obsession, isolation, and confusion about life and death. The murders. While Ed Gein's grave robbing alone would have been shocking, his crimes escalated to murder. His first confirmed victim was Mary Hogan, a local tavern owner who disappeared in 1954. Her body was never found, but evidence suggests that she may have been killed by Gein and her remains used in his collection. But it was the disappearance of Bernice Warden, a hardware store owner, in November 1957 that led authorities to uncover the full extent of Gein's horrors. When Bernice failed to return home, the local sheriff, suspecting foul play, visited her house. They found the front door locked, lights on, but the shop deserted. Investigators traced Bernice's last known movements and eventually came to the Gein farmhouse. There, they found a scene that would horrify even the most seasoned officers: the House of Horrors. The farmhouse appeared ordinary from the outside, an old, weathered building surrounded by trees and fields. But inside, the stench of decay and death was overwhelming. Investigators discovered a collection of human remains meticulously preserved and displayed. Skulls were arranged on shelves. Human skin had been fashioned into various household objects: lampshades, belts, masks. A chair upholstered in human flesh sat in the corner. Among the most chilling discoveries was Bernice Warden's body. She had been shot and her head removed. Parts of her body were missing, likely used to add to Ed's macabre collection. The police also found women's clothing, likely worn by Ed in ritualistic behaviors. Psychologists later concluded that Gein had attempted to transform himself into his mother, creating a woman suit from human skin. Arrest and trial. Ed Gein was arrested on November 16, 1957. The trial revealed the extent of his madness. He admitted to grave robbing and the murders, but claimed that he had only killed when his mother's voice compelled him to do so. Psychiatrists determined that Gein was legally insane. He was found unfit for trial and committed to a mental institution at Central State Hospital in Waupun, Wisconsin, where he spent the rest of his life. During interviews, Gein showed no remorse, speaking matter-of-factly about his actions. His motivations were a combination of loneliness, maternal obsession, and deep-seated psychosis. A stark reminder of how isolation and psychological trauma can lead to unspeakable acts. Ed Gein's crimes shocked the world, but his story would also inspire some of the most famous horror stories in modern culture. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, 1960, drew inspiration from Gein's mother fixation and the duality of his personality. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, took cues from Gein's use of human skin for masks and household items. The Silence of the Lambs, 1991, mirrored his obsession with human anatomy and the grotesque. While these films fictionalized elements of his crimes, they kept alive the terrifying reality of Ed Gein, the man behind the horror. Ed Gein died on July 26, 1984, in a mental institution, largely forgotten by the outside world. Yet his legacy endures, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can exist behind the most ordinary facades. Psychologists studying Gein note that his case represents a complex interplay of abuse, isolation, and mental illness. It is a warning that unchecked trauma, obsessive parenting, and extreme social isolation can warp a mind beyond recognition. In Plainfield, the farmhouse still stands, empty and weathered. Locals rarely speak of it, but those who do remember the name Ed Gein, a man who turned his farm into a house of horrors and transformed true crime into legend. Ed Gein's story is more than a tale of murder and madness. It is a reminder that the most terrifying monsters are not always fictional, and the darkest tales may hide behind the most ordinary doors. The question remains, how many Ed Geins exist unseen, living quietly while the world carries on? All events depicted are based on historical records. Ed Gein's crimes shocked a nation and inspired a genre that still terrifies today.